He was 15 and had 30 seconds to decide. He jumped. Mateo wasn't planning to be a hero that afternoon. He was just a 15-year-old kid hanging out with his friends on Balboa Island in Newport Beach. They had nowhere to be, nothing important on the agenda. Just a summer afternoon with nowhere to be. Then, a dog went into the water, and everything changed in under 30 seconds. By the time this video ends, you'll understand why Mateo's friends say that afternoon changed all of them, not just George.
Mateo stood at the edge of the dock. He watched. He calculated. The water was dark. He was wearing his clothes. His friends were watching him. He had maybe 30 seconds to make a decision. 4 o'clock. The fight. He jumped. No announcement, no dramatic pause. He just stepped off the dock and hit the water and started swimming toward George. The harbor was cold, colder than it looks from shore, the way water always is. Mateo swam hard, closing the distance between himself and George, who was still paddling, but slower now, head barely above the surface. When Mateo reached him, George was done. He had nothing left. He wasn't panicking the way dogs sometimes do in water. He was past panic. He was simply exhausted, treading water on fumes. Mateo grabbed him. This part is harder than it sounds. George weighed somewhere around 50 pounds. Wet dogs are heavier than they look, and a tired dog in open water doesn't have the coordination to help you. Mateo had to essentially carry George while keeping both of them afloat, kicking toward shore in water that offered nothing to push off of. His friends on the dock were watching him. One of them grabbed his phone. One of them looked for something to throw. None of them thought to look away. It took about 3 minutes. 3 minutes of open water swimming with a 50-pound dog for a 15-year-old kid who just happened to be standing on the right dock at the right moment. When Mateo finally got George to a set of harbor steps, his friends reached down and helped haul the dog up. The dog came out of the water shaking. Mateo climbed out behind him, soaking wet, breathing hard. George immediately tried to walk away and investigate something interesting on the dock. 6:30. The turn. On the dock, dripping, Mateo's friends wrapped George in a towel they found in someone's bag. The dog was exhausted but otherwise uninjured, no signs of distress beyond the obvious, waterlogged, shivering state of a dog who swum farther than he intended. Then someone thought to check his collar. George had a tag, a phone number. An owner somewhere nearby who had no idea any of this had just happened. Mateo's friend made the call. The conversation was short. The owners on the other end went from confused to alarmed to relieved in about 15 seconds. They stayed with George. That part matters. They didn't hand him off to a stranger, didn't leave him tied to a post, didn't assume he'd be fine. A group of teenagers on their afternoon off sat with a wet, tired dog on a harbor dock and waited until they could hand him directly to the person who loved him.
George's owner arrived 20 minutes later. When she saw him, she dropped to her knees on the dock and wrapped her arms around him. George, for his part, licked her face and then looked around to see if there was anything else interesting happening nearby. 9 minutes. The transformation. There is a version of this story where Mateo and his friends keep walking, where they notice the dog in the water, exchange a few uncomfortable glances, and decide it's not their problem, where they tell themselves someone else will handle it, where George doesn't make it back to shore. That version of this story exists. It happens every day, to animals and people alike. Someone is in trouble, and the people nearby do the math and decide the risk isn't worth it. Mateo didn't do that math. Or maybe he did and came up with a different answer. He's 15. He jumped into a harbor in his street clothes. He swam 50 pounds of wet, exhausted dog back to a dock using nothing but his arms and whatever swimming he'd done in his life up to that point. And then he checked the collar and made the call and stayed until the owner showed up. His friends filmed it. Of course they filmed it. They're teenagers. The footage spread quickly, not because it was dramatic or shocking, but because of something harder to define. There's a moment in the video, right as Mateo reaches George in the water, where you can see him assess the situation for just a beat and then commit, fully, instantly, without looking back at his friends for permission. That moment is what people kept sharing. Not the rescue exactly, the decision.